So today I want to talk about the cost of conflict in your life and what conflict is and what it does to the quality and connection that you have with your life, the quality of your life. So on this healing journey to self, to find our true selves, I feel like there are two opposite poles that we come from. There's the part of us that is our conditioned past from our childhood, our trauma, our diagnoses, and I'm going to go into those and how we can work through those in a different video. So we've got this us that we identify with and that we think is us, you know, our thoughts, our beliefs, our past. And then over here, we've got the true self, the inner self, the higher self, if you like, our unconditional love self, our higher wisdom, our connection to the universe and the divine, however we want to call it. But there's an essence to us that is more than our thoughts, our beliefs, and our past. And what we do is we work through those past beliefs, and we also work to nurture this love side, this authentic essence side. And then as they get closer and closer, they come together. And this is when we feel whole. This is when we feel connected to ourselves and we feel that we're living authentic lives. And this is the journey that I have taken, and I now feel that I have merged these two. It doesn't mean to say that I'm not without the conflicts in my life, but I deal with them in different ways. So let's have a look at how we can nurture love. So I'm just looking at my notes here. You see, we all have this self inside of us that we don't even need to go searching for. It is here. So what we have to do then is look for the things that are in conflict with that. What gets in the way of this connection to true love? And it is anything that you're fighting against. So anytime you have a negative thought about yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not slim enough, I'm not successful enough, blah, blah, blah. Anytime you put yourself down, this is a product of the inner critic, and that comes from your childhood. It's a part of your psyche that is designed to protect you, but it ends up not protecting you. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail in another video, how you can silence your inner critic. But know that talking to yourself in any negative way is completely and utterly unacceptable. Why do we do it? You know, it's a form of self-hate, and that may seem like quite an extreme thing to say, but it's true. I did it for years. Just the chat in my head was so anti-me. No wonder I couldn't connect to my life, because I wasn't connected with myself. So you must have a zero tolerance policy on that BS that goes round and round in our heads. And this negative attitude to life isn't just about how we treat ourselves, but it's about how we relate to others as well. You know, if we're judgmental about a certain section in society, or, you know, people like that and those people, or, you know, even if we're just stuck in a queue in a shop and we start thinking, oh, you know, this is outrageous. And we have this attitude where we're always in conflict with life. We're buffing up against it because there's part of us that expects everything to go just as it should be. You know, we're on a train and it breaks down and we're sat there for an hour. We can either accept it, we're in the flow of life, or we can start causing ourselves suffering by deciding that this is an outrage and this shouldn't happen. And if only the bloody government didn't this and that. And, you know, it may feel like a valid point, but the way that we execute these feelings, who are we causing suffering to? We're causing suffering to ourselves. You know, science has proven that when we are connected to our hearts, there's an institute called Heart Math Institute. I do recommend you go and have a look on their website because it's really interesting. But they've done loads of studies. And when we are connected to our heart and vibrating in the more compassionate, positive emotions of life, you know, love, and just being open to life, our heart expands and the electromagnetic field is just huge. It's a lot bigger than the brain. So it's really powerful. and it starts to affect other people around us as well. So, you know, depending on our attitude to life, that's the sort of life we have. You know, we can find conflict with so many things in our life, can't we? I've got a list here. So we can hold grudges and resentments. I suppose we all know people who aren't talking to their sister or their auntie or, you know, their friend who they fell out with years ago. And if you don't want certain people in your life, then that's allowed, of course. But it's if you're closing off yourself and your world because of these grudges, then again, you're hurting you, not the other people. Blaming others in the world. You know, say you had a really crappy childhood, you might carry resentment to your caregivers. Now, I know this was me in my boat. I had a lot of resentment and anger and frustration around my childhood. But now what I've done, it doesn't mean that my childhood has changed. I still had a childhood that I didn't experience as being, giving me everything that I needed. But my attitude towards it now has changed. It doesn't stop me opening up my heart. I have learned that all these experiences that happened to me actually help me grow, you know? So I'm grateful for all the things that have happened to me, because without them, I wouldn't be on this journey of self-exploration and I wouldn't have discovered what the true self is. And for me, the meaning of life, the meaning of my life, and the meaning that I think, the meaning of humanity, which is to flow in the unconditional love of life, to feel supported by life, to feel not in conflict with ourselves, but to love ourselves fully. And then life just starts opening up. It's really beautiful. And judging others, you know, gosh, I was so judgmental. And I still can be. I have to catch myself. It's not as harsh as it was. And what I realise now, that any judgment comes from my own insecurities. It comes from how I judge myself. So if you want to get to know yourself better and feel more connected to yourself, start writing down where you judge others. And this will give you an insight into yourself. And avoiding emotions. This is how we're in conflict with our life as well. If we are pushing down how we truly feel about things in our life, and this happens a lot, then this is closing off our heart as well. So it's time to understand that there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. There might be things that you need to work through because they are causing you suffering, but that's where you are. That's your authentic experience. So how can it be any different? It can't. So if we accept where we are, then that is our liberation. And in that space, we can deal with absolutely anything that comes your way. There's nothing you can't cope with. And if you're not coping with something in life, it's because of a belief that is telling you that you can't cope. Because you can. You are supported by life itself. And having fear-based worldviews, you know? The world isn't perfect. I know. I haven't watched the news or bothered myself and worried myself about who's in power and politics since lockdown, since COVID. I couldn't bear the fear-mongering on the news. I was disgusted with the BBC and their journalists and how they were just attacking everyone they interviewed with and looking for something to have a fight about. I thought it was disgusting. And one day I just turned that news off, turned the telly off, and was just like, no more. I'm not doing this. There is no real news out there. There is no real news. Everything is biased to someone else. Everything is influenced by some power, some money, you know, all the stuff. It doesn't matter who's in power. And the people who are in power, have they worked through their stuff? They're coming from, where are they coming from? Well, we don't know. But if they're not coming from a love-based world, a love-based reality, then why should we listen? Why should we follow them? What's the agenda? I do know that anything that I need to know filters down to me very, very quickly, so I don't feel I miss out on anything. But my world is the world that I want to live in, not that I'm being told I'm living in by someone else. So, you know, world-faced views are not just about politics, but I used to think that the world was an unsafe place and that I couldn't trust people. And because that was true for me, you know, as a young child. And it's interesting how I have already changed, because I suffered from social anxiety a lot, and I would just walk down the street, and even if just, you know, a girl, a boy, a man, a woman walked past me, which happens all the time, of course, my body would go into fight or flight. I wouldn't show it because I had to tough it out. But I was anxious around people all the time. And now I feel so grounded in my body, I don't suffer from social anxiety anymore. That's not to say that I don't feel shy sometimes, of course, because I do. And I feel lonely, and I feel all the stuff that we all feel as human beings. But my nervous system is not as hypervigilant. And that's because I'm grounded in who I am, my essence. I know who I am. And when you're scared, you don't know who you are. Because if you did, you wouldn't be scared. Yeah, so unhealed trauma, this causes conflict as well, you know. Like we said, I'm a victim, I am broken. You know, if only I'd had this in life, my life would be better. Because I used to think this. I used to think, gosh, if only I'd had that sort of upbringing, then I'd be okay. But actually, it doesn't matter. It isn't true, because we have the ability, the way the brain works, we're not a fixed thing. We've never been a fixed thing. And growing up in our childhood, we have started to protect ourselves and put barriers over us so that we don't know who we are anymore. And this work, this journey that we're on, and that you are as well if you're watching this video, is to bring these two parts of us back together. And then we are open to love. Then we can receive love. I recently went on a myofascial training, and I was lying on the bed and I had someone working on my neck. I did a short video about it actually, and I started going into trauma release, guilt and shame. And my body was moving around and I was crying and getting a bit angry, and the facilitator was supporting me, and she came over and hugged me and laid her head on me and just held me. And I have never, ever been held by another human being like that, ever in my life. And I said to her afterwards, no one has ever held me like that. It was just like pure love, pure support. And she said, it's just that you're open to receive it. And I thought, my goodness, yes. Because now I am more open in my life. There's love everywhere. This is the wonderful thing. You know? Once we have done the work on the past and we nurture this now, then this wonderful connection is there all the time. And I really saw that. And I just, you know, I have better friendships, better relationships, because my heart is open. And also I went to a beautiful festival at the weekend, and I was dancing to devotional music, and my heart just opened up and completely blissed out. This life, honestly, this life is so beautiful and so amazing. We are really, really lucky to be in these bodies, in this time, having this experience. And if you don't feel that way about life, then that you're in conflict with it. And those things, you owe it to yourself to sort those things out so that you can flow through life and feel loved and supported by it. It really is incredibly beautiful. And remember that you will only exist once in this body, in this time, in this realm. I'm not saying you won't exist in another time, in another realm, but I don't know. But here, right now, this is it. This is your chance to experience it fully and beautifully. And with an open heart. So, just to kind of recap, anything that you're in conflict with is separating you from having the most beautiful life and connection to love and self. That's any negative thought that you have about yourself that is based on fear, any negative thoughts about the world, it's not a safe place, anything that is in conflict to that love. And remember that life isn't perfect and there will be bad things happen in the world. There are conflicts and there are wars and there are this and unfair stuff going on, but from a place of love, you view it differently and you can handle it differently. And it can empower you, not diminish you. So, I hope you've enjoyed listening to my video. Thank you so much. And if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel and have a wonderful one.